So welcome to Support World Live 2021. I'm Ken Adamson. I'm Senior Product Manager at Matrix42. And with me is my colleague, Andrei Tchouvelev. And we represent Matrix42, of course, who develops enterprise class software that simplifies the employee digital work experience, but it also enables them to do their job and work their way from anywhere. And you know what? We all just want IT to work, right, Andrei?
That's right. And from the perspective of us wanting the IT to work, there's a couple of things. And today we'll talk about really the two challenges that we think are worthy of the underscore. One, companies really have no control beyond their own confines. So anything to do with the periphery outside of the enterprise, it really is unknown. And the second part to that is the SLAs that are driving and determining the behavior of the support provided to the end user community.
Yeah, gotcha. And so let's go ahead and start with number one. So when you say, what you're really saying is companies have no control of the infrastructure that's beyond what they own, both from a support standpoint and from a security standpoint. So the way I look at it is that all the pressure now is of IT, right? To support all that's now back on the shoulders of the work from home employees. And let's just say an example here, Mary, she's going to have to call our ISP because some mouse chewed on her her connection here to her ISP router. And look, we all know, and I hate it when we spend hours and hours on the phone with our internet service provider trying to fix something, right? So not only that, I'm sure that people that are working from home, there's kids now going to school from home, and there's more pressure on the employee to get that network back up and running so they can do their social media, and they can do their schoolwork, for example, which is really important. So yeah, it's sort of weird how the pressure who used to be on IT, corporate IT, is now back on the employee, and we still need to figure out how we support these work from home employees and give them the same level of service that they expect when they're sitting there in the office as well.
Right.
So if you look at this, so how can John, right? You got John who has taken the call from Mary. He's a help desk agent, and how can he help Mary, who has her own ISP? She has an outage, when John again has no control over Mary's home environment. So at this point, John's pretty powerless. He's not in a position to help. Mary has to call her ISP, spend hours waiting to get even someone to answer the phone, and then finally go through the troubleshooting process. So he's also motivated, right, by volume, these sort of volume-driven SLAs, to move on to the next call, right? He's looking at his watch. He's thinking, oh, I got to get rid of Mary because I can't help her. So Andrei, what are some of the ways that are creative or out of the box where help desk agents can help, if not solve the problem, provide an alternative workaround?
Well, that needs to be unpacked. And we got to begin with the notion that poor John is shackled by the SLAs. There's no way to look around it. SLAs are in place. Whatever he does, he's on the clock. He knows that. Because he's on the clock, the call is also being recorded. So creativity is not limitless in this instance because he's dealing with the unknown, but all he knows is the individual is kind of trapped somewhere on the other line. So yes, it's 2021, sort of going into 2022. John might suggest to leverage mobile hotspot, for example. But that kind of does require some steps, but viable. So if you lost an ISP, you have to be on the internet to connect to a SharePoint somewhere where you need to either upload or download the content you're trying to work with. Then a hotspot could be one of those. It will take time, obviously, to walk an individual through and
Right.
hope that that's going to work in the end. You could possibly, or the John in this case, could possibly suggest using a neighbor's Wi-Fi, perhaps, only to see a neighbor being shocked by the bill, or racking up whatever the expense is at the end of the month, because people may not fall off that neighbor's Wi-Fi, and 300-400 terabytes later of good Netflix content, it'll be a hefty bill. John can suggest certainly to go to Starbucks or public mall or any place that public Wi-Fi is offered. But again, it opens up a possibility of a security breach. So public Wi-Fis are designed for quick access, convenience, certainly not for productivity. And even if they are, no one can account for what you will end up carrying with you into the corporate network. And I'm pretty sure the security folks will frown upon somebody accessing sensitive data of public Wi-Fi. These are nonetheless viable options that John can probably quickly suggest
Sure.
to Mary. But
And
yes,
of
this
course,
is just
there's VPNs and things like that that people can use to kind of protect themselves on a on a public Wi-Fi, et cetera. But
yes.
so what you're saying, there's some risks if a help desk agent says, "Hey," tries to offer help, right? And maybe it's sort of outside of the norm, just to try to help Mary, right? Because help desk agents they do want to help, and a lot of them want to make sure that person is productive, even though that SLA is pounding them on the shoulder, but it's just sort of there still are these risks when you offer some advice, right? Can you kind of
That,
explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that's right. So, there are twofold risks. There's risk of um, the SLAs are typically structured to help the services organization to get to the root cause of what's happening, and kind of either address or resolve the case as quickly as possible. So the scenario where we have an end user in distress or struggling somewhere where there is no visibility, right away kind of places SLA out of bounds. So anything that John is doing has a potential of risk. By telling an end user to reset their router, you might inadvertently, or reboot it, that might inadvertently render router useless.
Right.
There's a possibility that the settings that were in there before, loaded in by an ISP, could be wiped. And then from a simple hiccup of a half an hour downtime, an end user now faces a service call when ISP needs to come down and do something to a router. Failing over to the mobile hotspot might incur data charges that could
Right.
be overages, could be other things.
Sure.
But the trouble going outside of SLAs, and John does want to help, they always lead to this question: well, by helping an end user, are you causing more issues or challenges? And it's kind of a precarious stand. So from impacting a device to possibly incurring financial charges to possibly opening doors to a security breach.
Right. Right. Gotcha. So explain this slide to me, because this is interesting. You and I had a conversation about this. So
Right. Well, this is sort of a mental depiction of what a service desk agent may be going through. Rightfully so. On one hand, there's this inherent desire of a good human to extend a helping hand and help, just because somebody else called in and says, I can't do something. On the other hand, well, there's SLAs. There could be penalty, but there could be bonuses. So an individual would be torn, and in this case, we're postulating that Um, what would entice an individual like John to help, knowing full well that whatever help he's going to provide is completely outside of SLAs that could lead to financial ramifications, penalties, call will be screened, he'll be reprimanded, miss a bonus. But there is a person on the other line that is desperately in need of help.
Right.
And so because of that, we also have to consider that the way service organizations staff what's considered to be a full-time employee is based on volume. So a specific volume of calls, we're picking a number 40 or somewhere in that vicinity that defines a rightful placement of an FTE resource or full-time employee resource. So which is interesting because it really is the metric that drives the number of people that a service agency or a support agency needs to have in order to accommodate the call volume happening. But because the SLAs themselves drive the behavior of John helping,
Right.
we're almost not allowing John to help outside of the box or be creative because SLAs kind of tell him not to. So,
Right.
and this is why it's a very challenging, very sort of a precarious stand where he is. He wants to help, but he's asking himself, should I be helping? So it's a tough place to be.
Right. And I think that brings us to our next slide here as well. So, um, yeah, continue. This is interesting.
Right. So, well, again, we're thinking through. So while a good John and a bad John with a trident deliberating what's happening in terms of that help. The reality of what's happening at a service desk level, and it doesn't actually matter what organization you take, whether it's an in-house service desk or whether it's outsourced, it's kind of all it's almost always the same. So you have the clock that's always running. You have the system that always have somebody in the queue and you gotta help. And if you, under current circumstances, if you deliver consistent a level of ticket closure or you triage them at a certain interval or you close as many as you can a month. Here is the financial remuneration. You might have your bonus. And obviously, that leads to a very straight line to have your toes in the sand and some sort of a getaway. It's a
Right.
very predictable path of if I stick to this, I can probably be rewarded and I can probably take my time off that I well deserve. And that may not necessarily be congruent with actually providing help.
Right. Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. So what do these challenges above, sort of result in? And when I look at this, it converts a help desk into almost like a helpless desk where,
Right.
IT don't work, right? People get frustrated because they're not getting the service that they need to be productive, right? So, I look at this as, people are getting frustrated as a result. And what do you think needs to happen here?
Well, so well, it's a good question to ponder on, I guess. But the reality is today, um, and that's especially underscored or even more noticeable with this hybrid workforce or workspace, where we're almost encouraging our human capital to work remotely, be safe, but at
Right.
the same time, we actually haven't evolved the SLAs to be in the position to provide that almost agnostic to space help. So the desire to help is still there, but the criteria that an end user needs to meet in order to get help is expanding, and subsequently coming back to the desire to help. That desire to help is now beginning to shrink as well. So where I can't really, I don't really know where that person is. Like I don't know what's happening beyond the ISP or where that connection is, or have
Right.
lesser visibility. And oh my God, I have the SLAs and the pressure, and I have to do all that stuff. And if I help, well, it's kind of outside of SLAs. What if I break something? And it's a definite penalty. So like it's not an easy thing to answer, and I don't think there's a straightforward line to it. But let's continue this discussion. I think we
Yeah.
can actually think through a few things.
Oh, absolutely. So again, just thinking through this. So how about, what can companies do to kind of address, these challenges, right? And I think that if we take a look at one solution, I'm thinking about ITSM tools need to be a little bit more proactive. So let's get into that. So if the ITSM tools are proactive, they need to be smart enough, right, to sort of aggregate some statistics and provide insights associated with, say, the persona like Mary. So, like, for example, what do they own? Where do they work? What's their role? What recent purchases do they make? Because maybe they recently purchased some new software, which could cause some problems with, performance on a system, et cetera. What installations were done recently, issues that she's recently had, et cetera. And this is sort of like, it, this is like a net new or persistent issue that happened before. And, we need to know, was there a previous solution, right? Was there another solution that was suggested? And
Mm.
I believe that we need to get to a point where we can automatically sort of verify against this, knowledge base, of articles, and look for similar occurrences with users that maybe might be in Mary's, location or area, right, geographically, and then have the ability to quickly search for similar issues within the enterprise. I think is key to kind of resolving these problems, or any problem, regardless if it's from a work from home problem, or a solution to a problem, or it's work in the office. You have to acknowledge, sort of the pain of the user. But it looks like, we can help you, and having the right tools basically leads to having a strategy for resolution.
All right. Well said on the tool set, and I think what you're saying is it is important to have the right tool set at your fingertips. The tool that can help you just gain control of or over the situation.
Right.
You can see if anybody else within the company called for a similar issue. So you can analyze the tickets. You can see if an issue may be related to hardware that Mary or an
Right.
individual who's calling is using. Maybe it's an application problem. Maybe it's a VPN client problem. So there's a lot of correlation that can be made having the right tools. And I think this is what you're alluding to. Uh, and what happens as a result, having the right tools, I just wanted to underscore the point. So having the right tools, uh, even if you can't immediately help, at least puts or places uh, a service desk agent in a way to talk through the plan, or talking through the plan with the end user, saying, "Hey, I know what's happening. It's an issue that 20 other people are experiencing. We know what the resolution should be." So even just talking a person through that would be incredibly advantageous and helpful, but not as helpful if you don't know who you're talking to. And it kind of brings us to the slide. And
Right.
what if you're talking to a monkey? Well, it is an unlikely possibility, but
Right.
nevertheless, you actually have no idea. And you kind of alluded to that earlier on, saying persona. So I want to expand on the word persona. We often we actually don't know who is on the other line, what they are going through, where they are, uh, what their circumstances are. Even suggesting to do certain things like rebooting a router or trying to unplug and replug a conduit in the attic could be challenging to some people. So actually knowing who your audience is just as helpful as having the right tool set at your fingertips. And we refer to knowing who the audience is as a persona because it's a combination of things that that paints the picture of who that individual is.
Right. And so how is this accomplished? I mean, what features in the tools, that in tools do we need to kind of accomplish this sort of, thought, uh, I don't know, I'd say artificial intelligence, some analysis in the back end. I guess those are the sort of features you're talking about, right?
Right. And there could be multitude of things. And the interesting part about it is most of organizations likely have the data, but just haven't cross-referenced it. It could be disparate, but it's still there. We can think of it as a multi-dimensional profile. There is typically in large organizations, there is an entry that generates your Active Directory account, your HR profile, your security profile, your access to corporate networks, some other resources. All of those places have fields that would, when put together, create a much better visibility of who the end user, who that person is. So we're almost kind of zooming out from an Excel spreadsheet entry, if you will, of who just a name and a number to a little bit more understanding sort of the geography what that person is, how far are they from um, public public mall, Starbucks, somewhere. Like anything that can give a service desk agent more confidence to talk through a possible scenario and even a resolution, even if there is no immediate help. Because at the end of the day, having the right tools and having the understanding of who the end user is or that audience is culminates in an experience. And that's all we want to try and deliver. We're trying to serve and we're trying to deliver the best possible experience that will be the end result of that interaction.
Here's a feature I was thinking of that I think comes to mind, and the system would actually analyze maybe the frequency of calls that maybe Mary made to the service desk, right? And that could help determine the technical acumen, right, of the person you're assisting, all right? And I think even the types of calls that come in, like if it's some simple thing like I can't find my mouse, something like that, you would kind of help you determine how to how to help this person in the best way and provide the best service, correct?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So let's continue.
Well, so and it kind of brings us back to the notion of a persona. We're only assuming that the individual on the right is now happy because
Right.
we know we know who that is, and obviously it makes the life of the service desk agent or the support organization a lot easier.
Right.
You can take so again, just by having access to the right tool set, and to your point, uh, analyzing the previous behavior, not the behavior of a person, but just behavior of interaction with service desk, previous calls, other things that could correlate and help uh, nurture that relationship and ultimately build the best experience. And what happens, another outcome of this, understanding the persona and then allowing service desk agent in this particular case to explain what happened, walk through what the resolution is, and then maybe, if time allows, educate what can be done to either circumvent certain things or maybe avoid these things
Right.
from happening in the future.
Got it. Well, we're going to move on here, and so we're going to talk about the restructuring the SLAs, and so what can companies do to still have guardrails, right, for these SLAs, but drive the quality of help and not the quantity of help?
Well, that's a very, very good question, and definitely worthy of a deeper dive. SLAs should definitely be looked at or based on customer satisfaction and not volume or transactional volume
Right.
that we're used to. So the current or let's call it traditional structure, it leads to dissatisfaction no matter how we look at it, because an individual on a service desk side is still driven by call volume and expediency of closure. So not the resolution even, just to close the ticket and get to the next one. So not spending enough time with your audience will inadvertently lead people to not be happy, and possibly band-aided solutions will lead to repeat calls, and again it will lead to dissatisfaction. The reoccurrence itself is almost guaranteed if you rush and don't invest enough time into looking into the core of an issue. What is actually causing it, as opposed to remediating things at glance. And again, in order to do that, more time needs to be allocated to dealing with issues, which leads into productivity loss. And the productivity loss, again, it's not a leap to assume if the issue hasn't actually been resolved, then it will reoccur. More time is spent on calls. An individual who's supposed to be finishing work or try to be productive, that productivity
Right.
it's out the window. Your hour is reset, your day is reset, whatever that is that you're working with. Your mindset uh, is not in the same place. And definitely the last one is the biggest, where there's a loss of opportunity to educate. And it's something
Right.
we talked about just earlier on. Having enough time or allowing an agent to invest enough time to explain what happened, walk through what the resolution is, and then educate on what to do to prevent it, ultimately uh, and hopefully leads to less calls to
Right.
service desks, more confident end user on the other line or on the other end, knowing, okay, uh, landscape changed, I have to do things a certain way. And it it at the end of the day does lead to a more productive, more or less stressful environment. So the opportunity to educate just has to be there, and it's not.
Right. Got it. So what about the by customer, satisfaction results? So now we're flipping it, right, at this point. So flipping it by volume, now we're flipping it to, restructuring the SLA to really be focused on customer satisfaction and the results of that, right?
Right. I'm kind of smiling to that one because it's almost intuitive. So you let the service desk agent spend more time with an end user. And you and I, we talked prior to that, it's almost sort of a reminiscent of the same experience with a family doctor. So if you really spend time and you kind of invest into uh, explaining how things are, you're kind of bound to see fruitful results. So you definitely have a chance to resolve the case, but not just resolve the case itself, but actually get to the bottom of what is happening. You will definitely have a much more satisfied end user because
Sure.
that person will feel truly helped. Time is spent, uh, the issue or whatever happened is explained, and then further education provided on what not to do or how to avoid or maybe a best practice. So obviously happier customer as a result of that, because if somebody knows, okay, I really shouldn't do this, so it's
Right.
not a leap forward to think, well, maybe productivity loss won't actually happen because an end user now knows how to avoid things or how to make their workflow more adaptable to whatever is happening that caused an issue in the first place. And the last one, again, is just as big as its counter of loss of education. In this particular case, we are reinforcing the mindset or rewriting, if you will, that you we treat a customer or we allowing the service organization to spend as much time as they need to help the customer, and the customer themselves being educated would know that well, best practices, they are more educated, but also they'll have more confidence calling in service desk, knowing full well that the issue will be resolved because of all the investment that the support organization will do or will make into their call. It just feels more personal. The entire experience is going to be different.
Right. So in closing, where we as Matrix42 see ITSM headed is to get to a point where AI suggests and leads either the user or the agent to a resolution that's based on historical analysis or similar problems and really getting to a quicker resolution. And what we're touting this is really actionable intelligence that leads to rationalized solutions. How do you like that, Andrei? So
I do, and I'll see it. Let me raise it. What's a good topic because AI is still relatively. It's talked about, but it's a relatively nebulous concept yet outside of very specific application.
Sure.
And what AI in this specific instance should be doing sometime in the future, foreseeable future, that is to deliver problem avoidance altogether.
Right.
So if AI or machine learning with AI in a combination is capable of analyzing trends and patterns, load and utilization, frequency of calls, even satisfaction, you take all the pieces of data that you currently have, historical, the real time, and you predict what part of this ecosystem is likely to lag, suffer, break, uh, and based on that, provide that actionable intelligence that you're talking about. So in this particular instance, maybe the call between Mary and John actually wouldn't even happen
Right.
because the system would know that you're as an end user, you're about to experience your ISP interruption because of uh, a denial of service attack on a provider,
Right.
and as a result of that would automatically create a hotspot on your phone and fail you over. So Mary in this case wouldn't even notice that something happened because the failover when the ISP connection is restored is done automatically. Or if something happens at the enterprise level, like you're running out of storage, or there is an attack on a data center or a sliver of a data store, it's taken offline, failed over somewhere else, all done in real time, but proactively with an element of intelligence why it's happening. And this is really where AI should be infused into
Absolutely.
our ITSM services methodology stack. So kind of going back to the 2 points that we made, understanding the persona and then having the right tools at our fingertips combined with AI, with
Mm-hmm.
all of that proactive analytics of trends and everything else, that actually would provide an entirely different experience to both the Mary and John, or a service desk silo organization, and an end user that has to deal with it. So
Right.
that entire interaction will be encapsulated in a different dialogue altogether. So that would be an interesting take for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the fact that, an ITSM solution being so smart that it can identify performance problems and of, say, an application that is used widely by the organization, and then automatically open a case before that it becomes a problem, open that case and or that incident, but also have an impact analysis as a result. These are the people who use this service who will be impacted, and to come up with that calculation very quickly, and allows the service desk agents or the IT team themselves to be more proactive and understand the impact of the issue as well, and take immediate action, which would result in no pain to the customer, right? No impact to or service disruption whatsoever. So I see that all these things working together. Not only just monitoring the performance of the infrastructure, the applications, but also that sort of digital workspace experience from the end user as well can help us identify problems prior to them becoming, issues that impact service delivery. So thank you, Andrei, for that. I appreciate it. As always, great talking with you. And we want to thank you guys for joining us here at Support World Live. And just let us show you how we can lead that change that we were talking about earlier. So thank you so much, and enjoy your day.